Dog fans, it's time to hunker down. Impact Media's weekly dive right through the hedges into the world of the Georgia Bulldogs football squad. He's my co-host, Jake Skinner. I'm Jeremy York. We're going to bring you everything Bulldogs that happened over the weekend. We're going to skip last weekend's game. It wasn't a big deal or anything, you know. We'll talk about Chaz Chambliss for another 25 minutes, and then we'll finish it with some Ohio State, right?
Yep, sounds good.
Yep. Absolutely not. If you tuned in for about half of what I just said, this is not your show. We are absolutely going to talk about the massive win, whether you thought they could do it or not, the massive win that the Bulldogs had over the weekend. What do you think about the game?
They proved me wrong, thankfully, because I had them pretty to lose, and they scored more points than I thought they could the rest of the year.
I believe I picked them to win.
You did. I went with my gut feeling on the fact that Mike Bobo wasn't going to be able to do anything as a coach, and he proved me wrong. But I will say, because I mentioned it before, Bobo will be back next year, barring something unforeseen. Georgia fans, I'm not happy about it either, but outside of a rough start, if you take away the rough start, which was what, 8 missed passes, which were drops by receivers,
Yeah.
Carson had a career day with accuracy. Like he would have had over 75+%
Hmm.
accuracy had if it hadn't been for drops. He would have had another 60, 70 yards minimum, probably another touchdown or two. Not a bad game. Running game looked
No.
better, but honestly, a third of your yards came from Carson Beck running 3 times. So it doesn't help that Georgia's hurt at the running game.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, we take what we can get, but hopefully they can. We'll see some fresh bodies this week against UMass.
You know what I do like, because I know you're going to talk about receiving here in a minute. I like that the leading receivers were not the person who has been over targeted for the last month and a half. It
Thank God.
went to everybody.
Went to everybody because the one that had been targeted dropped one of the biggest plays of the game.
Yep. And at some point, Kirby or Bobo or somebody went, we're going to skip him the next rotation.
Yeah, he stayed in there, but as a decoy, I liked getting the
Mm-hmm.
ball around. I hated that Lawson Lucky only got one catch for 23 yards. I'd like to see them get him more in space.
Yeah.
But Oscar Delp, 2 touchdowns. He was wide open when they threw the ball his way.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yep.
looked like the real deal. Urasek actually had some good catches. I was shocked by that because he struggled since coming from Stanford. Uh, I mean, the receiving core looked like a legit group, other than the drops, which I think there was like 7 or 8. So they can clean that up. Georgia's in a whole lot better space on the receiving game.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty crazy. You can drop 7 or 8 big passes and still really dominate the game. I mean, we know it was kind of close, especially first couple quarters, but by the time the third rolled around, this was pretty much the team that Georgia was last year. It's like they
Yeah.
kind of played around with some stuff the first 2 quarters, and then in the third and fourth quarter, they remember, oh wait, we're just levels ahead of you, and just distance
Yeah.
themselves.
I just would have liked to have seen better running game from Frazier. He was in there
Yeah,
for 44 snaps. He had, was it 19 carries for
19 carries.
68, 3.6 yards average. I don't think that's completely on him. I think that's on the offensive line sometimes. But to
Yeah,
be fair though, the offensive line played their best game of the year when you really
yep.
look at it. The reason I say that is because from left to right you had Monroe Freeling, Dylan Fairchild, Jared Wilson, Tate Rowledge, and Xavier Truss.
Hmm.
They all played 76 snaps. That's exactly how many offensive plays we had. There was no rotation for the first time all year. All 5 guys were in there. No one got hurt.
Could be something to
And
that.
Freeling was balling out. Like he was not letting anyone past him on that left side of the left side. Truss, I'm still iffy on him, but like the group finally played up to their potential. I just need to see that. Like I said, I'm going to harp the running game this week because that run game, I still think that some of the play calling is we're not getting creative enough on our run game. I think that's
Yeah,
partially part of it. Um, but yeah, I also think that Frazier's good, but he still needs to develop. He's gotten thrown into the fire a little too fast for him potentially. Not
yeah,
everyone's a Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley kind of a kid. No offense to the Cali kids, but those Cali kids are not used to the South. They're not used to how like Gurley and the other ones, they were used to the South. They knew what it meant to be a running back in the SEC.
yep.
Frazier's not that kid, but I think Frazier by the time he's done here, he'll be a solid back. But yeah, that offensive line, dude, I was pumped when I looked back and I saw them just opening holes. Like, I think I sent you. There's a video of, I believe it was Jared Wilson, the center. Literally made the Undertaker proud because he literally pancaked the guy with one hand up and down.
Yeah.
He did that one, and that was one of the funniest moments of the game because he just looked at the guy like, "You ain't getting back up easily."
Well, we'll get to the groundbreaking revelation we figured out that we talked about right before we come on. But let me say this about the offensive line. Maybe part of the issue this year is that rotation meant they couldn't get a continuity, and maybe they're better pass blockers than run blockers, and that's why the pass game exploded, and the
Yeah,
run game has shaky moments.
yeah, that's part of it. The rotation's been dumb. I get why they do it because they were afraid to lose guys because they've had that threatened because of NIL. But I think they finally realized. Like I know our left tackle Ernest Green, who I've said before, I think he's been injured. Oh, most of them have been injured, but I know his injury has been a little bit more severe. So
Yeah,
for him, he was just a step slow. So I think they benched him until he's healthy.
yeah,
Freeling finally looked like the left tackle I thought he could be. So if that's the case, when Ernest is ready and healthy, I say he needs to slide inside and replace Tate if Tate's not feeling healthy enough.
yeah.
Or because Fairchild needs to be in there. Fairchild's looking good. He's putting guys on skates. It's the right side of the line that I'm concerned with going forward with Tate's injuries and Trust just not being. This was his best game he's had, but that's
Sure.
not saying a lot. No offense to him. But yeah, I mean, overall, offense played a good game. I mean, you look at the second half. I mean, the driving that Georgia had to do. Let me pull that up here. So like 75, so 7 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 84 yards, touchdown. 11
Hmm.
plays, 57 yards, touchdown. 12 plays, 87 yards, touchdown. 12 plays, 92 yards, touchdown.
Yep. Moving the ball.
Moving, oh, excuse me, it wasn't a 57-yard touchdown. It was a Peyton Woodring field goal, 11 plays, 57 yards. My bad. But
Still,
nonetheless,
you're
you look
talking
at that,
70,
you're
80,
driving the
90 yards
ball
per drive.
the week before, Georgia's longest drive ended in a field goal. The only time we got close to
40
touchdowns when
yards.
we got handicapped into it.
Yeah. Like the longest drive was like 40 yards last week or something like that.
Yeah. So Georgia figured something out. Bobo looked like he knew what he was doing. He was countering things as they were coming.
Sure.
That's what he needs to do. Maybe I still don't think he's the right coordinator going forward long term.
No.
I don't think you'll find a Georgia fan who thinks he is. If you do, they're not the brightest ones in the bunch. You can tell your aunt or your uncle to kick rocks. Um, you tell them I said so. But nonetheless, he at least found ways to win. I think he'll do the same thing going forward next year because I think I have a good guess on who the quarterback will be. I don't agree with it, but the player plays up to what Bobo likes in a quarterback, and
Yep.
he's the favored one. So we'll see. But
Exactly.
with
Well,
that, I'm down to swap to defense if you want to talk defense.
where is he? Yep. There he is. There he is. Talk about somebody that had a banner day. I mean, we said, revelation there. I know you can. We got to figure out some way that you can hear. So I can
There you go.
move up. There we go. We'll do that for now. You got to see our man Chaz Chambliss, by far our favorite Bulldog on the team. I may be a little biased. I may be speaking for both of us. But good to see a local kid doing well. And I had said earlier in the year that I thought he was playing out of position, and I thought they had moved him in positions, but you had the revelation that he's actually in the same position. They've just kind of changed up what
Yep.
they did.
Yeah, it's the same thing as when Georgia admittedly last year and even starting this year we were concerned with the defensive line. And the issue that Georgia was running into with the defensive line is the fact that everything works from the inside out. That's just the way it works.
Hmm.
But you got a big Jordan Davis in the middle, you can stop anybody because he's going to take up 2 blocks. That allows your guys to blitz. You don't even have to blitz. You can literally run 4 guys and you're as long as they're strong.
Right.
Georgia had some underdeveloped guys, not completely on the development. It's also skill. Some guys
Yeah.
cap out too quick. Some guys just don't take to heart what they have to do. Some just don't have the effort. They might have the effort, but they don't have the physical skill set. I think that's what it boils down to is something was figured out on the defensive line and will be figured out going forward. And Chaz is the past 3 games, he's had really good games. And here's a fun stat for you. He is tied for the team lead in sacks at 5.5. He's tied with Jalen Walker, the sack specialist.
Here we will do a quick question then. Um, I'm trying to phrase it a different way because there's a podcast I really like that phrased it one way. And they took it from a movie, and I want to do it slightly different. Let's just do the easy buy or sell. He ends up either first or second in sacks for the team this year.
I'll buy it. I just because I hate to say that against Michael Williams, but Michael's been hurt all year. He should go pro because he's got the skill set. I honestly think Jalen will probably end up with another two or three. This next game, depending on how much they play, I think both Chaz and Jalen will end up with a couple of sacks apiece. He
I
finishes one
agree.
or two. I'd like to see him get number one just for the fun of it, but I also like to see Jalen explode over the next few games and get sacks galore just to bump up his numbers.
And I will also say that at some point that number 32 right there is going to make a massive play, not just a regular everyday play. No, it's a massive play somewhere around the quarterfinals because, spoiler alert, I do think Georgia's going to be in the 12. As to where they are in the 12, I'm not sure yet. I think they're going to be higher up than you think, but there's always a chance that they're a little lower than we think as well. But I think somewhere in the quarterfinals, somewhere in the round of eight, he's going to make a giant play.
Yep, I agree. He'll make a solid play at some point going forward. Curious to
No,
see
not
what he
solid,
does.
giant.
Yeah, he'll make a giant. I mean, he will. It'll be a huge sack to end the game again,
Something
or he'll
like that.
blow something up. Yeah, that's what I
Yep.
think will happen.
So you hear that, Chaz, and all the other people that know you that watch this. We're not just saying it because you're a local kid, not just saying it to try to get you to be on the show. That's totally up to you. That's a different conversation. We actually see the progression, and we actually see this kid doing well, and want to see him do more.
hmm Yeah, I don't disagree. He's doing good now. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about the defense some more. Like
Yeah.
I'm looking at this game stats, and I gotta go with something I noticed very early in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was about six, I want to say about six snaps into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dylan Sampson ran across to one side of the field where Julian Humphrey was, and
Mm-hmm.
Humphrey made a business decision. You don't
Yep.
make business decisions when you play for Kirby Smart. Now I get
Yeah.
making a business decision when you need to. I'm not arguing because I make a business decision about my shoulder every time I go to the gym, whether or not I'm going to hate it or not. But I get it.
I
Well, he
make
he
one
made
and
it.
not going to the gym.
There you go. He made a bad play and he didn't do something. He got chewed out and then they left him out there. Very next
Yep.
play or two, what happened? He gets a pass interference call and a bad one.
Yeah.
We did not see him the rest of the game.
Nope.
You saw Daniel Harris come out for the next bit of that game and he was out there as your cornerback and he had a heck of a game. He made tackles. He was all over the field. I'm going to go ahead and say it, dog fans. You all may not agree with me, and I understand it, but I'm going to go ahead and call it right now. You will not see Julian Humphrey on the field of Georgia again after this game, except in a blowout, or if they need to, because I already know that apparently the true freshman that I've been waiting to see, Ellis Robinson, I think they're just going to redshirt him at this point just because they needed to.
Yeah.
He is basically, if they go four wide with four receivers on the field
Mm-hmm.
at any point, he's the guy that's going to go in as your third one. Because right now they've got Malachi Starks playing that third cornerback star safety role, which he's perfect right there. It lets
Sure.
Dan Jackson and it lets KJ Bolden play out there because KJ's having a heck of a year so far since he's
Oh yeah.
got to start.
Absolutely.
So that being said, Julian Humphreys, he's fast, he's long, he's lank, he's got everything. He's got the talent. He's not the cornerback that Kirby likes to recruit. He's a good kid. I've heard from all I can hear, but he's gonna finish his career next year somewhere else. Probably get
Yeah.
drafted, but he's got to figure this out for himself. Excuse me. But I think Daniel Harris and Dalen Everett are going to finish out your years your starters, and you're going to see hopefully this next week Ellis Robinson because I wouldn't be shocked if we see him make a few big plays because he's got some skill.
Well, and when Kirby did make that move, just to put somebody different out there, maybe the lack of effort or not quite as much hustle. immediately a particular situation that happened just up the road many years ago from there popped into mind when a particular all-world center fielder was dogging it out there catching fly balls, and one Robert Cox decided, you need to come sit with me on the bench. You're done for today. I'm tired of watching you jogging around the outfield when you're the best player on the field. So that coach or manager of your Atlanta Braves, Bobby Cox, putting his all-star center fielder in Andrew Jones on the bench to prove a point. And he didn't care if he lost the game at that point. He was like, I will not have you, half effort out there. You either give me
Hmm.
all your effort or you can come hang out with me. And,
Yeah,
we'll eat popcorn and get thrown out of ball games, whatever you want to do. And when Kirby did that, I went, he just gained a lot more respect from the people that are still unsure about Kirby Smart. And the people that are unsure about him are just not watching games because he's still
they're not watching
probably the
games.
best
It's
in college.
also, yeah, he's probably the best coach right now, or if not in the top two or three. The
Absolutely.
reason why it's just I don't think we see him. I think because everything I've been reading online and the message boards I'm in and people who are plugged in, he Julie, like we've been wondering why Julian was still starting. Daniel Harris is more talented. El-
Yeah,
The other we have a true freshman that's more talented, but the reason why is mistakes in practice, penalty, pass interference.
sure.
These are guys who want to start but just have had a rough time. And Daniel Harris had some. Best way I can say it is he just decided in the offseason he was complaining about playing time. Then he had the car wreck or get the speeding ticket, got arrested.
Yep.
Um, when that happened, that kind of pushed him back into Kirby's doghouse, and so he had to spend a couple of weeks getting right. And he's been practicing better. And this, I think that switch was flipped, and I think going forward, you're going to see him play a massive role for the Dogs. Um,
Yeah.
the defense as a whole, like they played great outside of the first half, like, but then again, like there was just some blown assignments, things to clean up. But the fact is, Georgia keeps anyone to 17, and the offense plays as solid as they did. They can keep going. I don't think they're still a title team just yet until they hit the semifinals against somebody. I'm willing to believe it, but we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah. I'm just looking up a stat real quick. Where is that stat? Figured that as much. Yeah, this team in general though, just I guess they're waking up at the right moment. I don't think
Hmm.
they were asleep. I just think maybe they were trying to button up some things that either didn't need to be buttoned up or need a lot more work than they thought. And now that they are to that spot, they are one of the scariest teams in the country because they prove that they can put 40 points on the board without a lot of effort.
Yep, I agree. I think it's good to see Georgia play some good Georgia football finally. So, uh, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy with this win. Anytime you beat Tennessee, it's a good week.
Yeah.
Um, you know, as we said, going back to what you said last time, TIA, this is awesome. Like it was an awesome second half. I love seeing it. But I think, as Kirby already said, they've already switched over to UMass. We're going to play this Saturday.
Yep.
Should be a fun day for Georgia. You're going to see a lot of players. I think you're going to see maybe two or three different quarterbacks in the game potentially because you've got to go ahead and get two guys prepped for next year and go ahead and start the competition of that sec. Like let unless we're playing horrible, Bet gets a first half and then you rotate the other two quarterbacks and see who can get a streak going and who plays better
Sure.
between Rashada and Stockton, and then let your conversations for next year's starter start this week. Um, the game is going to be in Athens, 52
Uh-huh.
degrees is what they're saying on the SEC network, which means it's going to be streaming for the most part. 12:45 kickoff, lazy afternoon. So hopefully Georgia doesn't play down to their opponent because I hate those noon kickoffs.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a good thing. It's a 12:45 kickoff, so maybe they'll be starting to wake up a little bit then. But I
Hmm.
hope it warms up a little bit more than that because I will be having anything but a lazy afternoon, a handful of hours up the road from there.
Yep. So, I honestly cannot say that I have a lot to talk about going into this week simply because it's UMass. Georgia's got a 99% chance of winning according to the analytics. I definitely say that I'll make a prediction that you're going to see two. I hope I honestly I want to say that way. I think
Okay.
we should see three quarterbacks, and Georgia's probably going to win this game like 45-7 or 45-3 because they're going to sneak a play in there. But and I'm going to say Chaz Chandler gets another sack or two, and Jalen probably gets a sack too, and maybe a couple of picks by Harris and Robinson.
You know what? Maybe that's the big moment I'm talking about in the quarterfinals for Taz. Maybe he fakes the run in, drops back, and somehow gets an interception.
He
That'd
did.
be
But by
something.
the way, did you see that beautiful play when we scored a touchdown? Had him at fullback.
Yeah.
One look at that play, and I'm like, maybe at the next level, if he decides to go pro in the NFL, because I've heard he might go do something else.
Hmm.
Um, but if he were to go pro, I mean, that wouldn't be a bad spot. He's not the lightning fast guy, but he might be more like a Jurassic or how you pronounce his name. Like he might be.
Forgot how to say his name too. It's like
Yeah,
Juicy
not.
or
I
something.
was
It's
like,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, because I was trying to
You,
combine Eurosec with that, but yeah,
Juicy,
I think he could be
Juicy
something.
maybe?
Yeah,
I can't remember that.
that sounds right. But I think he could definitely play some ball that way.
Yeah, and you were talking about they may use three quarterbacks against UMass. Well, oddly enough, I'm a little familiar with the quarterback that should be starting for UMass, Fomicon, I believe is how you say his name,
Yep.
because he was the third string quarterback for Georgia Tech last year and actually got a good bit of action because of injuries and the fact that they weren't as good as they should have been. So this kid can fling the ball a little bit. He can be a little erratic. That's why he's 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But I think he was actually their backup, and he's now in. But kind of a tall, lanky kid. You don't want him outside the pocket. That's when he does the most damage. You actually want to keep him in the pocket, which leaves it wide open for the Chaz Chambliss sacks and things like that if you keep
Yeah.
him bundled up. And that's absolutely what you do to Fomicon.
Yeah. I mean, this is his sixth year in college. He, I was sitting here looking at his stats this year. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. He's not playing all that well. I mean, it's going to be Georgia. Like Georgia should be able to stay awake. The fans base always shows up, even for noon games. It's
Mm-hmm.
always loud. So I'm hoping they're as
I mean,
loud as
look,
they
they're already
were.
there. They're
Yeah,
already there.
exactly. But I'm hoping they'll be loud. I think they can get in his head, and I don't see UMass getting too many points on us because Missouri only allowed three. I think Georgia should be able to get a shutout or only allow 3 points themselves.
Well, I think the spread is 42 points, obviously for
45-3.
Georgia. It's I think
45-3.
42 is a little much, but it's probably around the 35 to 37 range. I would bet. I,
Yeah.
I
It just
would,
depends on those quarterbacks.
yeah, and the weather. This will be one of the chillier games that they've played, especially in Athens. So, maybe that has a little to do with it, but I doubt it. I
Yeah.
think this is going to be slight cruise control, even though Kirby's not going to let them just sit back and relax on it. He's going to keep them pushing, I think. But I think mid third, you start to see that quarterback battle for next year, like you said. I think that's very much what we're going to see.
Yeah, you should. I mean, it would be smart to do that because I mean, as long as the game's in hand, let the other
Oh,
two
I
go
see
ahead
what
and
you
get a
did there.
taste of gameplay. But we got the playoff coming up in a few weeks. Do you see the rankings that they just released?
I have not. We got a couple minutes. What are the rankings?
So 1 through 4 is Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Boise State. Those are your quarterfinal buys, or the buys for the first round, play the quarterfinals. And
Oh,
then
okay.
I'm
So
gonna
it's a
go.
bracket.
I'm
Okay. I was looking at
and
the
there,
rankings going. I don't see them.
and then you've got the bracket shows BYU at Ohio State in the first round, Alabama
Interesting.
at Notre Dame.
Mm.
Then that winner would play Oregon potentially. Then you got Georgia and Penn State, and Ole Miss and Indiana. I'm going to go ahead on a
Man,
limb here. Penn State is not who everyone thinks they are. I'm sorry, but Penn State is a James Franklin team in that they beat the teams they're supposed to beat and they lose the games that they are supposed to lose. You're not, Penn State is that team who has not been proven anything yet, and they're not going to be. That's just who they are. This is what they do every year when we get into it. And I'm loving Indiana being up there. I'm not knocking them. I'm not, I don't want to say anything too bad about them, but come on. You've played seven or 18, seven of the worst teams out of in your conference. Literally the bottom 10 teams, you
yeah,
played seven of them and you've beat
yeah.
them all. That doesn't give much confidence going forward. So
And
No offense
quickly,
to
I
you.
know, but I know we only got a couple minutes. Let me throw this out here because somebody brought this up, I believe, on the radio when I was listening the other day. Um, do you want Georgia in the SEC title game?
I'm actually looking at the conferences right now. So
Do
there's
you
a
want
part
them
of
there? Because
I
there is
don't. You almost.
if you get in there, you got the chance to get the bye. But if you lose, you might have the same as last year, and you may be so far back that you get left behind. So
Yeah.
there's that argument, like you know
There's an
what?
argument.
I want to be the third team. I'll watch those other two fight for it, and then we'll sneak in with our spot.
Yeah, honestly, at this point, because see, here's the thing: is Texas and Texas A&M. You got Auburn this week for A&M, Kentucky this week for Texas. Georgia
Mm-hmm.
has the bye. So if Texas loses one game, Georgia's in.
Yeah.
A&M loses, I think Georgia could still technically end up in the playoff or in the conference title. I really don't know how that one goes out. As a Georgia fan, you want your team to win the SEC title because it matters, but it doesn't matter anymore. It's not like the
Right.
divisions in NFL. They just don't matter. It's a banner you hang up. Yes, you still want to win a title as a Georgia fan, but I could live without it if it means we make the playoff. I still don't think this is a title winning team because going back to what we were looking at, the playoff predictor, I'm looking at every team out here. The only teams I don't think Miami can hang with half the team. If Georgia plays the way they did this last week, Oregon and Miami are the two teams that might scare me a little bit more. Ohio State's that team. Indiana won't scare me as much. Penn State doesn't, Notre Dame doesn't, and BYU doesn't.
Nope.
Boise State's iffy on that one. Oregon matches up well against Georgia, and Bama matches up more than well. And I don't think we beat Bama. I don't think we can beat Bama. We can't stop their passing. They can't stop the quarterback. But all that to be said, it's a good spot for Georgia to be in right now. I think if we see what we need to see the next 2 weeks, Georgia might have a shot at least getting to the semis.
Well, you said you don't think they're a title spot or a title contender, maybe, but a lot of people said that about Atlanta United, and they're a couple wins away from being in the MLS
That's true.
championship. So it is what it is. We're to the end of the show. Thanks for joining us on Hunker Down. He's Jake Skinner. I'm Jeremy York. We'll see you guys next week. Deuces, gooses, go dogs.
Go Dogs.